So now we start session 6. So I think you're so exhausted for the long day, but it's the last session. So finally, be patient for one more hour. The person Tamai is participating by online. Can you hear me, Mr. Tamai?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, he cannot appear here, so suddenly I'll do the moderators. I'm Makiko Nagata from Frontier in Japan. We Frontier provide economic security solutions with AI. It contains 3 systems and analysis for supply chain, shareholders networks, and researchers networks using open source data. We offer them to public and private sectors. So I know Takashi well, but I know he's a good player of the violin. But I'm not sure others. So would you introduce by yourself from Eric?
Oh.
Would you?
There we go. Eric Robinson. I'm with Kale Discovery. I'm a lawyer by education, but have been on the operations and consulting side for 25 plus years. We provide electronic discovery, information governance, data management, services and technology. I do focus on the consulting area, helping clients figure out how to best manage their data. So from the operational side, how do you implement all those policies that we've been talking about today in an effective and defensible way? But and I don't play the violin, but just anything else outside is fine.
Thank you.
Oh, here we go. So I'm Ivan Schleger. I'm a partner in the International Trade and Cross-Border National Security Group at Kirkland & Ellis. In my misspent youth, I was the chief counsel of a Senate committee that drafted an obscure piece of legislation called Exxon Florio, which empowered CFIUS to review transactions. That ended up paying for my children's education. It's kind of nostalgic being here. I want to say the 1980s called when they want their trade policy back, because at the time that we worked on Exxon Florio, we were focused on the supply chain risk associated with our dependence on the Japanese for microelectronics and flat panel displays. So today we can talk about how everything old is new again, some lessons learned from both a very high profile transaction in front of CFIUS and some other transactions that have received less attention from Japan, but have presented some interesting national security risks that were easily mitigated and easily navigated the CFIUS process. So don't let Nippon Steel determine how the U.S.-Japanese trade relationship is going.
Okay, I'm Yuichi Ikeda. I'm a PwC partner in Japan's forensics team. So I've been practicing forensic service for the last 20 plus years, and then I've been touching the sort of dark side of people in the private sector. I think we're going to talk about economic security, and then I guess my experience covers a lot in the area of economic espionage and then trade secret theft. So we can probably talk about that and get some opinions from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So unfortunately, I don't have a violin today. So my name is Takashi Ito, come from Mitsubishi Electric headquarters. So I'm in charge of the Economic Security Division. So Mitsubishi Electric established the Economic Security Division in October 2020. So maybe Mitsubishi Electric's Economic Security Division is the oldest division in Japan. So we are focusing the 2 elements. So first is supply chain resilience. Second one is prevention of the information leakage. So I'm happy to this opportunity, and so I would like to enjoy this discussion. Thank you.
And Mr. Tamai, would you introduce?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm sorry not attending person in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I'm a professor of law at the University of Tokyo and a registered attorney at law. And I'm pursuing research, especially on intellectual property law, including trade secret protection and also economic security issues. And yeah, today I'd like to introduce you the important and interesting cases in Japan and in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I need to say this session was something different from previous one because economic security is not a compliance issue, but management materiality. So, may I start, Mr. Ivan, just tell the sanctions for the companies. The Japanese companies is watching carefully for legal forced labor prevention act. How do you think the expansion of that?
So I think that if you look at where the U.S. government is focused right now, they're using a variety of tools to accomplish some policy objectives. And so be it the sanctions regime, the export control regime, so look at what we're doing on export controls vis-a-vis semiconductor equipment going to China. So on the sanction side, we're seeing not just with forced labor in the Uyghur situation, but also companies who have connections to the PLA. We're seeing, you look at the Biosecure Act, look at the continual publication of the SDN list on some well-known companies that we would do deals with 10 years ago that today are now on a list of, like, including recently a private equity firm that was well-known here in the U.S., but then was placed on a list because of connections to the PLA. So I think you have to look at sanctions, export control, foreign direct investment review, as all the tools in the toolbox that the U.S. is using right now in the competition with China to address the Ukraine-Russia situation, because both semiconductor equipment and other microelectronics are showing up in drones being used against the Ukrainians. And then finally, how we manage both the sanction regime and the control regime vis-a-vis the Iranians. So I think when I was saying in the 1980s called, if you look at it, a lot of the tools date back to the Cold War era, where we used sanctions and export control and foreign direct investment review in our competition with the Soviets. And so we're just seeing that now on a broader level with Russia, China, and Iran.
Thank you. In 2022 May, in Japan, economic security promotion law has been passed. And before that, Takashi established the organization. So how do you think as a Japanese company?
So as I say, so we started economic security in 2020. So in 2018, so I noticed that the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act was imposing the export controls beyond the Washington arrangement, which greatly affected Mitsubishi Electric's business in China. So we lose lot of the business for the Huawei. So we are in charge of the semiconductor business. So we couldn't, we couldn't continue the business. So in that sense, so supply chain is a very important issue, we think. So, but supply chain issue is contains some elements. So first is Ivan-san said, so export control. second one is regulation from the such as UFLPA or other sanctions control. The third one is disruption. So as you know, so under the coronavirus situation, so we cannot deliver from the China or other Asian countries. So supply chain resilience is one of our most important issue for continued business. So we have to identify our choke point in the supply chain. So this is our mission, I think.
How do you manage the supply chain?
Carefully.
Very difficult question, but we tried. Mitsubishi Electric has a lot of business line. So from satellite and equipment of factory automation, equipment of train or automotive, and semiconductor, home appliances, so and defense equipment. So we have a lot of business line, and so we are buying the materials from 40,000 companies per year, and we are buying the 1 million items. So this is direct suppliers. If we want to identify the indirect suppliers, it will be astronomical number. So this, if we want to the whole supply chain, so this is impossible, I think. So we are using, but we, our purchasing group, they have big effort, and so they identify the 180,000 millions, 180,000 items. They identify the third layer suppliers. But this is a limit. So we are using the AI system for the visualization for our supply chain. Machiko is our good partner for the supply chain visualization.
Thank you. I will ask again. How do you think the influence the selection public or Democratic Party for the sanctions?
So what, my prognostication for the election and what it means for sanctions and CFIUS and foreign direct investment. I mean, let me start off with in a very divided country, right? There is one issue that there is really no division on, and that there is one issue that no matter who wins, I don't think there's going to be a fundamental policy shift, and that's the U.S. relationship with China and how far we decouple and using export. I mean, the Biden administration, very tough on export controls. I mean, I think there are a number of Japanese companies who have had a lot of, as you said, had a lot of experience with it. I don't think there's going to be a fundamental shift in the U.S.-China trade relationship. I mean, Bob Lighthizer was my partner for 25 years, my friend for longer. You know, he will be more aggressive, probably, but I don't, pretty much around the margins. You know, the other area, though, that may change is on foreign, set aside Nippon Steel because I really think that's an anomaly and that has to do with politics, labor unions, that has to do with use of the trade laws and countervailing duty and how that impacts Nucor and some of the other U.S. companies. I think that a democratic regime is run by the lawyers in the various agencies. A Trump administration more likely run by Twitter and less by the lawyers. And so I think you're going to see, it's a very Biden's very process-driven. Biden regime, Treasury Department, Commerce, is all very process-driven. There's a personality element of the Trump administration that I think we saw the last 4 years that I think it's hard to, it is more unpredictable.
Thank you. If you afford to say, how is the situation of the U.S. to
Look, I joked about the 1980s, but I will go back to, with all this gray hair, I remember when the U.S.-Japan trade relationship was the principal, trade issue that was front and center. We did the 88 Trade Act in part because of Japan. And a lot of the tools that we talked about were tools that we empowered in the 88 Trade Act. But Nippon Steel is an anomaly. So you have a combustible mix, and I think every 10 years within CFIUS, we get one high-profile, politicized transaction. Think Dubai ports. Dubai is a tremendous ally in the Gulf, and yet it became so politically controversial that we updated the CFIUS law because of a dispute between two private companies and using the politics. So Nippon Steel is about labor unions, politics, the symbol. U.S. Steel is an emotional symbol in the U.S. And by the way, conversely, the idea that a U.S. company can acquire a Japanese company we've had some experience with activist shareholders trying to change the corporate boardroom or buy certain parts of major Japanese companies, and it ended up with a Japanese solution, not a U.S. solution. So, nobody has completely clean hands. I will focus on this. In the same time Nippon Steel is garnering these types of headlines, which is unique, as I said, because of politics, Panasonic buys One Networks, gets approved by CFIUS in the first review period. And One Network, I did the transaction, so I'm going to take a little credit. One Network also does classified work for the U.S. government. At the same time, Toshiba and JIP goes through like that. So, actually, in a weird way, the Nippon Steel situation, for every Japanese company going through the CFIUS process now, I guarantee you that you're not going to be blocked. And it's strictly a timing issue and not a deal certainty issue. That being said, there are certain steps that you're going to have to take to address third-party risk associated with China and national security concerns. But I was with the Secretary of Navy 2 weeks ago, and the Navy is working to make both Japan and Korea an essential part of our supply chain because the capabilities that we have in Japan and Korea, and because of the importance of Japan as an ally in Asia. So again, I think I can do chapter and verse on how I might have handled Nippon Steel differently, but I think that's the outlier, and that doesn't reflect anything about how strong the U.S.-Japan relationship is. And, we'll fight about semiconductor equipment and academic licenses. But we want you to be, a cornerstone of our Asian policy.
Thank you. The economic securities topics is so wide, so we need to focus on the next one is data security for the critical information. So, Mr. Tamari, would you have any good examples that between U.S. and Japan differences?
Yes, thank you very much. Can I use my slides? It is not available. uh, on the screen. Okay. Oh, this is my slides. Yeah. Please give us a slideshow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And today I'd like to explain you our issues in criminal justice. I would like to demonstrate it, introduce two examples from Japan and the United States. And both are typical trade secret criminal cases in the United States and Japan. Next slide, please. And next one, please. Yeah, these are two cases. And the first one is United States versus you in the Eastern District, Tennessee this year. And in this case, the defendant, Y, is a chemical engineer with a PhD degree and a U.S. citizen of Chinese origin. She worked as a chemist for the Coca-Cola company, and her job was to test the chemical coatings used in Coca-Cola's beverage cans. And 6 chemical companies developed new so-called BPA-free formulas. And Y was one of only a few Coca-Cola employees with access to these formulas. Meanwhile, Y planned to start a new company in China that would manufacture material. Partnering with a local Chinese chemical company, she applied for and later received business grants from the Chinese government in the framework of 1,000 talents grant. Before leaving Coca-Cola, Y successfully transferred confidential information of the chemical companies to her personal drive. And next slide, please. And in 2019, she was arrested by FBI agents, and jury convicted Y of all counts of conspiracy and attempted to steal trade secrets from her former employers. And in the end, on September 16 of this year, the Eastern District of Tennessee sentenced her to 14 years in prison. And in addition, $200,000 fine. And next slide, please. The other case is a decision of the Osaka District Court on August 18, 2021. The victim company was Session6, a major chemical manufacturer in Japan. Like the case in Tennessee, the defendant, K, was a specialist in chemistry. The crime was also similar in that he downloaded important technical information from the company's server, and he provided the Chinese company with trade secrets. The leaked trade secrets were information related to a material used in smartphone screens. Comparing this case with the Tennessee case, they have in common that the trade secrets in question are extremely important and have a high property value. Next slide, please. The Osaka District Court decision stated that the trade secrets were unique and special to the product in which the victim company had a high market share, and if leaked, the victim company's business would be greatly affected. And the maliciousness of the crime is also similar. The decision also points out that the defendant was not acting on a temporary impulse, but was continuously cooperating with the development of the product in question, having been recruited by the Chinese company. Next slide, please. So reasons. For these reasons, Osaka District Court condemned K in stating that the criminal responsibility of the defendant cannot be seen lightly. So, what was the specific sentence? The decision stated that it was appropriate to give the defendant with no previous criminal record 2 years in prison, but with a 4-year suspended sentence and probation. That means K had to be careful not to commit any crime, including speeding violations for 4 years, but he was not deprived of his freedom at all. However, this would effectively mean that he was not being punished. Therefore, the Osaka District Court, considering the negative impact of trade secrets leaking abroad and the need to have a strong deterrent effect against such leaks, that decided to impose a fine in addition to the suspended prison sentence, which is unusual decision from the perspective of general prevention. This general prevention is a term often used in Japanese criminal law, means that the punishment is imposed in order to deter similar crimes. So, how much was the fine? It was 1 million yen, not 1 million US dollars. At the current exchange rate, this is about 6,700 US dollars. This is the reality of what I call implied leniency policy in Japanese criminal system, criminal justice. So, at the end, K was given an unusually heavy punishment of a fine of 1 million yen, but according to media reports, he was immediately re-employed by Powell. I don't know how much his annual salary was there, but it might be exceeded 200,000 US dollars, as K is a specialist in chemistry, and he contributed to the Chinese industry while bearing the stigma of a criminal in his own country. He can feel the intention to reward such people generously and increase the number of people who follow in their footsteps. Next slide, please. So, if the manufacturing technology for cutting-edge semiconductors is essential for their security, then the cost of acquiring it is not a problem for Chinese government. There is no assumption of a foreign sovereign state that will provide them with protection and guarantee them a comfortable life in Japan. Engineers who make great sacrifice to serve a foreign sovereign state are heroes in that country. In addition, if a person who does the same thing here in the United States would have to spend 14 years in a federal prison, but in Japan such people would not lose their freedom at all, it would be like inviting economic espionage from around the world to Japan. That is my point. And thank you very much for your patience to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tamai. For Japanese companies, Yuichi, how do you manage the data?
Okay, so I think before talking about how to manage the data, I probably should explain that the investigations that I've done in the past related to the economic espionage and trade secret theft, so that I just want to set up sort of a ground for that, the topic about how to manage the data. So in my 20 plus years of career into the forensics, I was lucky enough to be involved in a number of investigations for those economic espionage cases and trade secret theft. So about 20 years ago, the Korean companies are very, very active to acquire the technology from Japanese companies. So that was not necessarily illegal because they were very active in recruiting the engineers from major Japanese companies by offering probably double or triple amount of salary. So the Japanese company was not expecting that such recruitment from coming from the different countries. So they lost many engineers, and then some of the cases which became potentially illegal was that those engineers basically took the data with them when they left the company. But the problem was the company was not expecting that such things could happen to them. So they basically recycled their computers right after those engineers resigned from the position. So by the time they realized that those employees were basically taken by the Korean companies, they had no way of investigating what happened and what's been taken. But next day they realized that there is this a new patent filed by the Korean company that was identical to the items that they were developing in the Japanese company. And then other things like the foreign companies like from PRC or Korea try to acquire the Japanese company through the M&A. But it is sometimes very tricky because those companies will not directly acquire the Japanese company with a special technology, but through different companies, which is sort of masked in a way that it doesn't look like it's a Chinese company, but it is actually funded by the Chinese company. So some of the Japanese companies are not used to use the sort of intelligence to look at what they're really dealing with, what kind of company that they're dealing with. So that sort of things that important that the Japanese company needs to probably learn to how to protect themselves, not just on the sort of a data side, but before protecting the data, they have to protect themselves from those the tricky way used by the PRC companies to acquire the technology from Japanese company. So I think one of the things that I want to get insight from Mr. Ito is that I think still a lot of Chinese companies are trying to recruit Japanese engineers by offering double or maybe triple amount of salary. And how do you actually deal with those situations? How to protect the engineer from leaving the company? That's probably a tricky question.
It's a very difficult question, but thank you for a great question. So yeah, this is our process now. So under the process now, so we have to identify our crown jewel, so the technological crown jewel, and so we have to identify who deal the crown jewel technology. Of course, we can identify the patent or the patent people, but not only patent, but also include the know-how or not memorized or not realized technology. So this is our situation, and so we have some agreement with the U.S. Open Intelligence Company, and so we are now collaborating how do we identify the person and crown jewel. And second step, how we can retain the person. So we cannot offer the double or triple salary. So how do we can retain? This is a big problem. So this is our situation.
Thank you for the thank you for the insight. So when it comes to like how to protect the data from the sort of insider threat, is that I think one important aspect he mentioned that how to identify the crown jewels. What is the technology that they have to really protect from the threat coming from either inside or outside, and how to basically protect or how to put the security or access control to manage those important information or data. That's one thing, but also another thing is like how to identify the insider threat is another important factor from my point of view, because I think the one side, the Japanese company emphasized that the diversity is very, very important these days, and then they try to recruit a lot of foreigners in their team, but they do not necessarily conduct the thorough background check to see if they are the potential employee, not without any malicious intent to take the data from them. So that's another thing that it is probably a very controversial topic, probably in the Japanese environment. But that's another thing that I think are important, that how to screen the background of those potential employees. And I think that's probably what I have to say about how to protect the data.
Thank you. Eric, how's your opinion, including cyber attacks?
Yeah, so the cyber piece is one component, but coming back a minute to what Yuichi was talking about, and it was mentioned earlier about creating policies and creating protocols. You know, a big piece of this is taking proactive steps, doing things like monitoring, creating programmatic elements around departed employees, so you know what data they had, what they should have had when they left. Having the ability to go back and do the forensics work. That takes proactive thought and planning and being able to build policies and protocols around that. And that's one element in this from a protection perspective. When we start talking about the cyber security perspective, it becomes a very different playing field. Because it's not always an external threat. Cyber threats can be internal as well. No company, I don't care what country you're in, is ever going to be able to protect 100% from an employee who chooses to leave or an employee who has malicious intent. But what we can do is design programs to do the best we can. And the best we can is getting better as technology improves. And this is the double-edged sword of technology. It's a great benefit in what we do day to day, whether we're talking about AI, we're talking about being able to do communication surveillance, supervision on documentation and things like that. But it's also it's also a huge danger, because AI, generative AI, are still areas where we're trying to figure out how to best manage these. I mean, there's people in this room that are involved in building AI models, involved in building large language models and different types of learning scenarios. They know full well that teaching the model is one thing. How do you protect it downstream? And those are all parts of this process. But from a cybersecurity perspective, there are things that can be done. The common term is hardening your environment, but there's only so much you can do, because if you create such a constrictive environment that you're almost impenetrable, at that point you're probably preventing your people from doing the work that they need to do. So there, again, it has to be a balance, and there's a risk-benefit analysis that comes into this. So the best thing is to understand, again, identifying what your high-value assets are, whether it's data, whether it's technology, whether it's physical or more intangible like code, for example. Understanding what that is, and then not being so constrictive that you're saying we have to have this massive protocol in place for the entire organization, but understanding that you may have one regime in place for certain types of data, for certain employees based upon the sensitivity of work that they do, but then also be able to be flexible enough that there are other areas that where you can approach it slightly differently. And that's, I mean, I'm talking about this in a very ethereal way. We could get down into a rabbit hole that is very technical, and we could be here for 3 days talking about that. But it is really being able, A, understand what you have, understand what's important to you, and what would damage you if it got out. But then also from the cyber perspective is understand that there's only so much that any organization can do. You can open the newspaper or listen to the radio or the TV on any given day, and there's companies that you would never expect to have had a cyber incident are having cyber incidents. And then there's the physical theft of data, which is not technically a cyber incident, but basically puts you in the same position. So that's, again, I could go on and on, but Ivan has some comments.
I want to follow up on something that both of you said, because I think in the context of a CFIUS review, so I'm going to go use an example of when SoftBank acquired Sprint, a Japanese company acquiring a tier 1 network in the US. The agreements that are imposed by the US government as a condition of CFIUS approval, the national security agreements, address every single issue that you guys both talked about in terms of cyber, insider threat, employees. So most agreements in the tech space now include a governance provision. They include a robust cybersecurity plan. They include a vendor review process, sometimes with those vendors being vetted also by the US government to address Chinese espionage risk. And by the way, it's not just Chinese. I do a lot of work for French and Israeli companies. I have some frenemy clients, I mean, it's a trust but verify situation, Koreans. But employee screening, cybersecurity, governance provisions, vendor review process, and an annual meeting with the US government where they're going to provide you with an assessment of insider threat issues. So it's like the government has taken what you guys do on a day-to-day basis and imposed that as a condition of approval now.
And I guess and I think that I agree. The challenge is that, and I think we all see it, is that most companies have policies in place. The challenge is implementation, monitoring in a real way, so that you don't get to that annual review and then you find out that you have a excuse my language, a holy crap moment. That just kind of puts you over the edge and gets you into hot water, potentially with multinational regulators.
Yeah. And that's what governance is important. I mean, one of the interesting provisions in the Sprint transaction was on a public company board, you had a national security director who had responsibility for overseeing. Our director at the time was Admiral Mike Mullen, former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Let me just tell you that the training and follow-up was phenomenal. But that's, I mean, you really have to have people, compliance people are paying attention, but also in the C-suite, you have to pay attention.
Do you have? Okay. Any more question? Do you have? The question?
Well, I'm
No?
standing between you and a cocktail.
Tired? So, yeah.
So this is the first time to explain the Japanese. Sorry. So this is my first time to explain our economic security to the U.S. friends. So, but I have a lot of meetings with other countries. So, economic security is difficult to explain. Economy is driven by private sector. Security is driven by nation. But economic security is a very symbolic one. So the symbol is a collaboration with private sector and nation. So we have to collaborate with the government, not only Japanese government, so not, but also includes the US government or other countries' government. So we are preparing the collaboration, and if you are interested in our economic security, so please call us Mitsubishi Electric. Mitsubishi Electric. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 玉井先生ありがとうございました。Thank you. So thank you for listening.